So now that Firebase is configured on our application, we need to create a button so that whenever someone clicks on that button, we sign them into our application. Cool? So we actually do want to update our HTML a little bit. Let's change this button up here, the one that says more vert. So when someone clicks on this button up here, it'll put a drop-down menu up where they can either sign in or sign out. Cool with that? So when someone signs in, we want them to be able to click on that button and click the sign in button and be able to sign in with Google. Okay? So to do that, let's go look to Materialize again, and let's see what their little drop-down menus look like. I think it's JavaScript. Here we go. Drop-down. So this is what the drop-down menu looks like. I'm just going to copy it for the time being. We're also going to need to initialize it right here. I'll do that in a second. But take this little drop-down menu right there, and right where it says more vert, we're going to want to paste it in just because we're going to copy a lot of this. We're not going to copy all of it, but we're going to copy a lot of it. Now notice how we have this anchor tag here that says class, drop-down trigger, and BTN, and it has an href of just like a hashtag, right? And it has a data target of drop-down 1, and we also have this unordered list right here with an ID of drop-down 1. This is where the actual drop-down is going to go, and it's going to be hidden until we click that button. Now you have to have the same data target, needs to be drop-down 1, and the ID needs to be drop-down 1 for this to work. So to do this, we're going to replace this first anchor tag right here with the drop-down trigger we just selected. Right there, just bam, replace it like this. And if you can't see that, let me just like do one of these right here so it's easier to see what I did. So I replaced that first anchor tag with this anchor tag right here, and I don't need this anymore. We're just going to keep that little UL with the drop down, and we're only going to keep 2 of these sections. One that says sign in, and one that says sign out. Cool? Anybody have any questions about that? Yes. I'm also going to get rid of this BTN tag because I don't think we need it. And I'm going to give this an ID equals auth dash dropdown dash button. So I've done a few things here, updated this a little bit, but for the most part, this is still mostly the same. I've added a sign in and a sign out button. I also want to make sure these are black, so let's give these a class equals black text for both of them. And let's give them both IDs too. This one should be ID equals sign in button, and this should be an ID of sign out button. Because if we have these things, we can then add some JavaScript to them, so whenever someone clicks on them, they either sign in or sign out. Of course, I'll Slack this whole thing to you right now. Now, it also might be important to give these, this one right here, an ID of like auth dash dropdown or something, and the data target of auth dash dropdown, just so that they're the same here, just because they need to be the same data target and the ID. And I think dropdown 1 is just like not very descriptive as to what it actually is. So if we do that stuff right there, and we save this, oh, make sure this says sign in, that says, I screwed up one thing. Make sure this says sign in, that says sign out. Because we don't want 2 things with the same ID. One should be the sign in button, and one should be the sign out button. If you caught that earlier, nice. If you didn't, it's all good. That should be pretty much all we need for the time being. So if we save this, we need to go into the UI and we need to initialize the dropdown. So right up here at the top, I'm going to initialize the dropdown by using the code they give us in the initialization section of the materialize.css dropdown part. So you just copy this code right here. It is not exactly correct because you need to have the section for options. You need a variable for options. I'm just going to say let options equal an empty object. You can add all different kinds of options there, and you can check out which kind of options you want. Like, do you want it aligned to the left, to the right? Do you want it to auto-trigger? Do you want it to be a container? All this other cool stuff here that you can do. How long it should take to open, how long it should take to close, all different kinds of things. We're not going to do any of that. We're just going to create this empty object here. We're going to save this, and we're going to click on this button right here and see if it works. Oh, check that out. A sign in and a sign out button. Now when you click on it, nothing should happen. Does everybody see that? So now we have a nice little drop-down menu also. But notice how whenever I click on it, that blue outline goes there. Does no one else get that same blue outline when you click on the drop-down menu? That's kind of gross, huh? Let's go ahead and update that first and foremost. And that is actually something that's a little bit complicated. So just so you know, this outline is there by default as soon as you click on it. And so to update that, you have to go into the style.css. And I'm going to go up here to the right below the nav wrapper, because that's what the dropdown is in. And I'm going to say .dropdown trigger :focus. So whenever someone is focused on it, like they just clicked on it, I want the outline to be none, and that needs to be important. So that there's no outline around the drop-down trigger as soon as someone clicks on it. So if you need the UI of the JavaScript part, it's just this part right here. All I did is I copied this from the Materialize drop-down section right here. And then I added a variable for options because they don't actually give you a variable for options there. So you could totally replace that variable, or just the options, with just like an empty object like this. That's totally fine. But since the variable options was already there, and if you want to add options, it gives you the opportunity to do that. And so by doing this, it initializes all the drop-downs on the entire page. And this makes building your app like pretty straightforward. Materialize does a pretty good job with that. Now they also have a bunch of vars in here. I usually change those to like const, or let, whatever you feel more comfortable with. I like using ES6 a lot of times, just because it makes me feel nice and fresh and cool and new. You don't have to. It doesn't matter. I just like doing it. It literally does not matter at all. It will read the old JavaScript. It will read the new JavaScript. It doesn't care. Bless you. But the new JavaScript is just like, it looks nice. And so when I do this, everything now works, and I can now attach event listeners to the sign in and the sign out button. So whenever someone signs in, bam, I sign them in. Whenever someone signs out, bam, I sign them out. And so to do that, let's play again, shall we? And so I want you guys right now to actually do two things. Inside the Firebase.js, I want you to open that up because we put nothing in there so far. I want you to create two functions. One called sign in with Google, that console.logs sign in, and one called sign out with Google, with just console.logs sign out. And once you do that, actually I'll wait for a second. Now if you have both of those functions written in your Firebase.js, we want those functions to run as soon as you click on either of these buttons in the drop-down menu right here. So if you click on that, you want it to say in your console, whenever you click on this, you want it to say sign in with Google. When you click on that, you want it to say sign out with Google. So your job here is to write some code here, write some code that selects both the sign in button and the sign out button, that selects the sign in and sign out button, and runs the sign in with Google, and sign out with Google functions. Take a few seconds right now in your groups of 3. See if you can figure that out. Here's your functions. You want to write code so whenever you click on those two buttons, it either runs the sign in with Google button or sign out with Google button. Don't worry if you don't get it. We're going to get there. I'll give you a few minutes, make it happen. So by selecting the sign in and sign out button, all we're trying to do is find something with an ID, and we see it, sign in button, and find the thing with the ID of sign out button. And then in the UI, we can say const sign in button equals document.querySelector sign in button. And do the same thing with our sign out button. And if we do that, right here, we want to run to each of these functions whenever we click on the sign in button or the sign out button. That would be here and there. And so actually, what we need to do is in our UI, we'll say, I'm only going to do the sign in button right now. We say sign in button dot add event listener. On the click, I'm going to run a function that takes an event, and it runs the sign in with Google button as soon as we click. Ta-da! And that's literally all you need to do. You add an event listener that whenever you click on the sign in button, it runs a function called sign in with Google. And I'm sure you could do the exact same thing with a sign out button, because they're the exact same thing but the word sign out instead. And so by doing that, we should then be able to click on that button and see the word sign in appear. Ta-da! Sign in, sign in, sign in. Now if you get the sign out button working, great. But I want to make sure I teach you how to sign in with Google right now, and then we'll call it quits for today, because I think that's more than enough. We cool with that? Great, so go ahead and do the sign out button as well, and we'll come back together. Yes.